Welcome back to Lucore Automotive Services. Today, we're working on a 1968 Pontiac Firebird. It's a pretty nice car, really. The customer brought it to us for a few things. We're going to update some steering and suspension components and make it handle a little bit better, make it a little more fun to drive. We're going to be putting in tubular upper and lower control arms, new steering components, and a heavier duty front sway bar. That's pretty much all we're doing to this car on this time around. We will set it up with a proper alignment to make sure everything's good to go. The car should handle much better, be much more user-friendly for daily driving. It is starting to get cold here, so it probably won't see too much road use for the next few months, but when he's ready to get this thing back out on the Ohio drives, it'll be ready to roll. So the first thing we're going to do in changing out the front upper and lower control arms on this car is we're going to pull out the old shocks, and then we're going to remove our lower control arms, and then we will install our upper control arms. Luckily for me, this car does not have headers on it, so it should be a little smoother install. I might be able to get these upper control arms out without having to do some of my tricks, but we'll see how it goes as we go along. So these are our sway bar links, which help give us stability in the turns. The problem is with an old rinky-dinky sway bar like that, it doesn't do much. So we're going to upgrade him to like 1 1/8 inch, which will really help keep our car level in the turns instead of body rolling in the turns. It'll keep that front end planted, so when it goes around the turns, the front end will stay solid. And it'll turn instead of roll around the turns. So these guys, as I recall, I don't think, maybe you can. You can get these out in the car without having the subframe off, but we're not going to use him. He's going straight to the scrap pile. So now I'll get my ball joints loose, get my shocks off, and then I'll be ready to switch out my lower control arms. I couldn't get the cotter key out, so I'm literally just breaking it off by rotating the nut. Because ultimately, all I'm going to be doing is replacing all this stuff. So the ball joint and the nut that holds it on are going to be replaced with new parts. But you do have to get the cotter pin out of the way enough to get your wrench on it. Aha, there we go. And once you rotate your castle nut far enough, the cotter key will sever. And then you will be free. So, now I have my upper ball joint, and my lower ball joint loose. And I'm going to leave them loose. I don't want to take them off all the way. So I'm going to use a hammer to dislodge the conical seat on this upper and lower ball joint. But the spring pressure is going to help me break those loose. And I'm going to leave those together because I'm actually going to pull the lower control arm out from the pivot bolts, the bushing bolts. And then I will drop my spring out, then I will remove my lower control arm, and then I will reinstall everything. Now when you're replacing ball joints, you can use a BFH to dislodge your ball joints. Oh, that's good. My lower ball joint just released. I really need to stop hitting this car. Edit that out in post. Oh, that's not coming loose. So we're gonna use a different method. So we're gonna use a pickle fork on the air hammer because this one's being stubborn. Now it's loose. And it still has my pickle fork. So, you don't want to use a pickle fork on a ball joint you're going to reuse because it's going to cut the boot. You don't really want to use a hammer on a ball joint if you're going to be reusing that ball joint because it can damage the ball joint. But it is an effective method to get them to come loose. I'm gonna bet that this bolt is stuck inside this bushing because that's the kind of luck I have typically. So that's gonna be interesting. Once again, we end up fighting rust. Let's see if we can get these back two out. So these back control arm bolts are a little bit of a bear because they're hidden inside the subframe. So you got to be a little creative to get after them. To hold them so you can get them off. Oh, that one came off much easier. So both of those feel like they're going to come out. That one feels loose. That one feels loose. This one does not feel loose. It's definitely trapped on the inner piece of the bearing. I'm probably going to have to heat it and do medieval things to get that bolt to come out. That back one feels a little tight too. Yeah, that one's stuck in the bushing as well. That's going to be fun. That's going to be fun. All right, well, no big deal. That's working on old cars. Progress. Progress. This is either where I get the bolts out without a problem, or you get to watch me eat a coil spring in the face. Sounds like fun for the whole family. That bolts out. Not too bad. Let's see if we can get this other fella out. So close. Oh, you're gonna pop out and punch me in the face. You still want to do that, don't you? Ah, I got it. So it was caught on the threads, but now it's out. And we can lower our control arm. And I'm going to put it back in. I'm going to put it in there a little differently. Lower. Hey. There we go. No more spring pressure. You don't get to see me eat a spring today. Oh, that spring is crusty. That was loud. All right. Progress. Now. Oh no. I bet that guy's not coming off. going to win. I win. Got it loose. Castle nut on the run. These are always funky to get out, as I recall. Oh, there it is. Just so you can see the difference between the old front sway bar and the new front sway bar, I figured I'd let you see here. So it's pretty obvious the new sway bar is going to have a lot better ride control. It's going to keep our front end planted and level. So one of the reasons we're replacing these old style lower control arms and upper control arms is the new control arms have better bushings in them. These are a rubber bushing, and you can probably see that they're all deteriorated and womper jawed and dry rotted. And the new ones we're putting in are an aluminum style bushing, which will hold the alignment much better, and it will handle much better. They're also lighter because they're a tubular design rather than the stamp design. But the biggest reason we're putting the new control arms on this car is because they will give us much better geometry for our alignments. We'll have much better caster, we'll have much better camber for running radial tires. So now that I've got this lower control arm out, it's time to put the new lower control arm in its place, and then we will get the upper control arm put in its place as well. Moving forward. So these are our new lower tubular control arms. They've already been recessed, so they should fit our drum style front brakes, because we're not upgrading our drum brakes to discs yet. These use a bushing with a nylon spacer and then an inner trunnion. This is the first time I've used these sway bars. I'm interested to see how they pan out, but just by looking at them, they look very well done. Nice welds, powder coated. I think they'll be just fine. It's almost a sin to put these nasty, crusty, rusty front springs back in this car with these gorgeous control arms. But that's okay, we can upgrade ride height at another time. Hopefully when we do disc brake conversion. I always win, one way or another. So I had to take my drum backing plate loose from the knuckle to get my lower control arm in. No big deal. So now I'm going to put my spring back in. I'm going to try and get this guy to go back up in its place, and then I'll move on to the other side, and I'll drop it down and do my uppers. So when you're putting your control arms in, make sure you grab the one for the correct side. This is the passenger side, so it's not going to work real well on the driver's side. So let me grab the other control arm. That should work better. Yeah. That's going to work a lot better. Try this again. So the bump stops go towards the rear position, which is what threw me off when I grabbed these, because their bump stops are not installed correctly. Not a big deal. we'll fix that right up. Bump stop in the rear. I'm not entirely sure what that bolt does, but maybe we'll figure that out here in a minute. I don't think it's necessary, but it will probably keep water out of the tubes. So we'll stick it in there snug and leave it there. Apparently the driver's side was the easy side. This side, both lower control arm bolts are stuck in the lower control arm bushing trunnions. It's starting to sizzle. So I have to see if I can get the bolt to release from the inner bushing to get my control arm out. Fun stuff. Ow! That was dumb. Well, I think that'll get it. Heat and persistence. Ouch. Heat this bolt up one more time. I'm going to hit it with the air ratchet and see if it'll come out. See if it'll come free. She's coming loose. All right. Control arm's still hot. Spring stuck in the frame. There we go. All right. Bushings are shot. That guy's off. Nice. put this control arm back in. We'll do our upper control arm. Didn't go that far.
You found it, you're lucky.
Found it! Oh shit. So I made a thing to compress this spring a little bit to make it a little less dangerous. Got our nice upgraded nylon bushed control arm bushings. Now we got to get our spring in the socket correctly.
The springs are in. The front's in, the back's not. The backside is fighting me. Probably because all the weight of the engine hangs in here and pinches this subframe in. Well, after Phil farting around with this for an hour, I finally called in reinforcements. I pried while Bruce used a punch and a chisel, and we were able to get the control arm into place. And I got to pull off my compressor for the spring, put my nuts on, and then I can change out my upper control arm. Then I can put on my new steering linkages, and then it's time for an alignment. That's gonna be much better. Looks like that spring compressor might be a one-time use. That's not looking good. Oh. Fail. I need my tool back. on out of there, Sally. Oh. There we go. Oh. Hey. Yeah. I win. May not be able to use that again, but it got the job done. That'll do. Both lower control arms are on, shocks are in, ball joints are tight, cotter keys are in. The driver's side of the control arm is actually already done. It came in and went out without any problems. This side I'm probably going to have to pull the bolts out. That is next. Well, there is a serious stack of shims on this upper control arm. So we're going to take these upper control arm adjuster nuts off. And the engine's in the way, so I'm going to have to push the studs out of the frame member. And then I can pull my arm out, put it back in, put my studs back in, and lock it back down. It's not going to get there. I win. Now you gotta just come off. So will I I'm gonna have to pull that one off too, I think. That's too bad. Oh, can I sneak it? Come on, give it to me. I'm so close. It's so close. Oh, that's too bad. Alright, well, I gotta pull other stuff. Alright. So these control arm bolts have a knurl at the end which holds them into the frame. You don't want to put a wrench on, or a socket on this side and turn them, because then they won't be held when you're doing the alignment. So you want to drive them straight out. remove your control arm, clean them up, put them back in, drive them in so that the knurls are seated, and then your alignment guy won't be mad at you when he goes to loosen these up and set your alignment and the bolts spin. So it makes it much harder to do an alignment when these are stripped out. I need a bigger pry bar. And we'll see if we can get this guy out. You are probably not going to cooperate, or I'm going to break a spark plug. Oh, got it. Remove control arm. Those control arm bushings are just completely destroyed. There's nothing left. Cleaned up my bolts. Gonna stick them in here. Make sure my bolts pass through these guys. Feel pretty good. Feels pretty good. Feels pretty good. Oh, I forgot to dress my bolt threads. Yeah, that's the one I was hitting with a hammer. Let's make sure the nuts go back on those okay. Now these should be a mechanical locking nut on these, because otherwise they can work loose and then you lose your alignment, and nobody likes that. We're gonna dress that up a little bit. All right, now my nut works now. Kind of fits nice. So you can put these in a forward position or rearward position on this car. I'm going to put them in the holes towards the front, which is going to push the upper control arm back, which is going to allow me to put more caster into the car. Caster equals stability. We like caster. We definitely like more caster than what these things came with from the factory. But they were running bias ply tires at the time, so. Find my nut. Gotta find my other nut. I hate it when I drop my nuts.
I'm gonna be nice, Rick.
Got my bolts pulled and seated back in place. My uppers are in, they're all nice and shiny. And I have to paint everything else under the hood so the rest of it looks all nice and pretty. So now I can put my upper ball joint on, I can grease my joints, grease my pivots, hang my front steering components, and then it's on to the alignment rack. And that is a whole lot of shims that we are not putting back into this car. Oh, new pitman arm. It's the wrong one. So I'll go work on something else while I'm waiting for the right part to come, because the pitman arm is the last thing I need to move forward on the steering on this so that I can go do my alignment. So unfortunately, unexpected delay.
So it's been a couple days. We got the correct pitman arm for this car. So now I'm going to reinstall my pitman arm, reinstall my gearbox, put on my steering linkages, and then I will align this thing. Yay! Then we can get it out of here. Nice. Got a little better stance. So I am much happier with the stance on this car. It's still a little pigeon-toed, so I'm going to put it over in the alignment rack, set our alignment, make sure I'm happy with where my caster and camber's at, and then we get the best part of the day, the test drive. Looking forward to it. sadly, I will probably have to put different springs into this. Because this is sitting just a little bit too low. It might be all right. We'll see. I'd like it to be up about another inch, inch and a half. The stance actually looks really good, but I may have to get a little newer spring to have it sit up just a hair. We'll see. I'm gonna lock this alignment down and go drive it. I'm pretty good. My camber I can sort out a little bit better. So the alignment on this thing turned out pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. I've got a full 6.5 degrees caster, which is phenomenal for this car, and then a full degree negative camber. So this thing should handle pretty well with radial tires. It should track really nice and should hold the road quite well. I'm gonna go drive it, see if I've got any rubbing problems. It is sitting a little bit lower than I was expecting it to be, but they are the original springs. Probably should have put new ones in there while I was in there, but it wasn't in the budget at this time. So we'll make sure we've got it at the ride height he likes it, and make ssure everybody's happy and make sure he enjoys the way it drives. He's going to be ecstatic with how this thing drives compared to how it did. It used to have so much body roll going around turns that it felt like we're rolling around in a boat, just shifting from side to side. Now it'll be nice and planted with that massive front sway bar up front. When it goes around turns, it'll be planted nice and flat. It won't have the body roll. It'll actually want to turn and carve. So that wraps up our 1968 Camaro front suspension upgrades. We upgraded our front upper and lower control arms to tubular control arms that are fully adjustable. They give us more camber gain and they allow us much more caster and camber for a much better handling vehicle. We also upgraded our front sway bar to 1 1/8 inches, and it dramatically made a difference over the original sway bar. As you saw earlier, the difference between the new sway bar and the old sway bar is just immense. So with that, the car runs, drives, stops. It actually turns now. I mean, you gotta love a Pontiac with a big block Pontiac 350 in it with a 3-speed. It's a pleasure to drive, and now it's actually fun to take some turns in. So I'm looking forward to hearing what the customer has to say after driving the car with all the upgrades we've done. I did have it for a couple extra days because I didn't like the ride height. It was a little too low. The control arms I got for it didn't specify that it lowered the car, but they clearly lowered the car about 2 inches. I ended up putting a 1-inch coil spacer in to help pick the nose of the car up to a little better ride height for what this car is going to be doing. I also ended up putting new rear U-joints in it, as the yoke side U-joint was binding and singing a little tune when we were backing this car up. So new U-joints, 1-inch coil spacers, upper and lower tubular control arms, huge front sway bar. It's well worth the project to make that happen on your car. I gotta tell you. Got the proper alignment set up, steering wheel straight, drives down the road smooth, and when you go to turn, she makes her turns. I want to say thank you for watching our show. Please feel free to leave a comment below, hit subscribe, give us a like, let us know you enjoy what we're doing, and we'll keep doing stuff like this. Again, these are all just customer cars that are having us do work on their vehicles, and we decided to share some of the cooler stuff with you. When we're not doing brake jobs and timing belts and tune-ups, we're working on some pretty cool old cars. Well, again, thanks for watching the show. Have a great day.